Italy's attention is particularly focused on Africa, where nations already beleaguered by long periods of drought and by the effects of climate change are now faced with a situation compounded by food insecurity, making them more vulnerable to instability and easier prey for terrorism and fundamentalism. And this is a choice: to create chaos and spread it. And in this chaos that produces tens of millions of people potentially in search of better living conditions are infiltrated criminal networks that profit from desperation to collect easy billions. They are the traffickers of human beings that organize the trade of illegal mass immigration. They deceive those who rely on them to migrate to find a better life, having them pay thousands of dollars for trips to Europe they sell with brochures as if they were regular travel agencies. But those brochures don't tell you that those trips all too often can lead to death, to a grave at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, because they don't care whether the boat used is unfit for that type of travel or not. The only important thing for them is the profit margin. These are the people who, owing to a certain hypocritical approach to the issue of immigration, have become rich beyond measure. But we want to battle against the mafia in all of its forms, and we will battle against this too. The fact is that the fight against organized crime should be an objective that unites us all and that also invests the United Nations and this place. Can an organization like this, which reaffirms in its founding act faith in the dignity and worth of the human person, can it turn a blind eye to this tragedy? Can we really pretend to not see that no other criminal activity in the world today is more lucrative than the trafficking of migrants, when it is the UN reports themselves that have shown how this business has reached, by volume of money, the same level of drug trafficking and has largely surpassed that of arms trafficking? Can this assembly of the United Nations, which in other times was fundamental to definitively eradicating the universal crime of slavery, can it today tolerate its comeback under other forms, that the commercialization of human life continue, that there are women brought to Europe, forced into prostitution to repay the enormous debt they incur with their traffickers, or that there are men thrust into the hands of organized crime? Can we really say that this is solidarity, to receive as a priority not those who truly are entitled and have need, but those who can afford to pay these traffickers, to allow these criminals to establish who has the right to be saved and who doesn't? I don't think so. I believe it is the duty of this organization to reject any hypocritical approach to this issue and wage a global war without mercy against traffickers of human beings. And to do so, we need to work together at every level. Italy plans to be on the front line on this issue. With the Rome process launched in July with the Conference on Migration and Development, we have engaged Mediterranean and various African nations in a process that follows two main paths: defeat the slave traders of the third millennium on the one side, and at the same time tackle the root causes of migration with the objective of guaranteeing the first of rights, that is, the right of not having to emigrate, of not being forced to leave one's home, one's family, to cut off one's roots, and being able to find in one's own land the conditions necessary to achieve one's own fulfillment. Here, too, we must have the courage to tell it like it is. Africa is not a poor continent. To the contrary, it is rich with strategic resources. It holds half of the world's minerals, including abundant rare earths, and 60% of arable lands that are often not utilized. Africa is not a poor continent, but it has been often, and still is, an exploited continent. Too often, the interventions of foreign nations on the continent have not respected local realities. Often the approach was predatory, and in spite of this fact, even paternalistic. We must change course. Italy wants to contribute to the construction of a model of cooperation capable of collaborating with African nations so they may grow and prosper from the great resources they possess. A cooperation from equal to equal, because Africa needs no charity, but to be put in the condition to compete on an equal footing on strategic investments that can tie our futures together with mutually beneficial projects. In this way, we can offer a serious alternative to the phenomenon of mass migration, an alternative that is work, training, opportunities for nations of origin, and pathways for legal and agreed migration, and thus integratable. We will be the first to set a good example through the Mattei Plan for Africa, a development cooperation plan named after Enrico Mattei, a great Italian who knew how to balance Italy's national interests with the rights of partner states to witness their own moment of development and progress. The focal point is that we have to have the courage to put humankind and human rights back at the center of our action. It seems like a self-evident principle, but, however, it is no longer the case. Not now. Countries are invaded. Wealth is more and more concentrated. Poverty is rampant. The slave trade is reemerging. All this seems poised to put the sacredness of the human being at risk.